The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. However, we have always encouraged you all to like and share these shows on social media and with all your friends and neighbors, because if it's happening on the Treasure Coast, you'll probably be able to hear about it on the Sue Ellen Sanders Show. Right now, here's the host of the show along with a guest in the studio, Sue Ellen Sanders.
Welcome, and I'm really pleased to have with me today a new friend and somebody who is fresh to the Treasure Coast. Leigh is here with us today, and she is a communications consultant who recently moved down here to the Treasure Coast, and most recently I had worked with Cox Communication. We're going to find out a little bit about what Leigh does currently and how she can kind of help to change your life, for your family's life, for your business, by helping guide you with public relations and communications. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. So I'm so glad to be here, and let me take a minute to congratulate you. For those who don't know, Sue Ellen's being nominated as the Communicator of the Year, one of the nominees. So congratulations.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Very well deserved.
Yeah. Of course, y'all have heard me talk about one of my favorite organizations, the FPRA, which stands for the Florida Public Relations Association, and the Treasure Coast chapter. If you are in the communications field at all, it's a wonderful place to be. It's a great group of individuals that range anywhere from the nonprofit field to government and municipalities to private business, all the people who do the public relations and communications and the marketing for the different organizations that they're a part of. But what we're going to talk about today with Leigh is really how you could use those strategies, whether you're in the communications field or not, to make your world a better place.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. I think particularly after the pandemic, Sue Ellen heard a lot from a lot of people in terms of their careers. I think it gave people a time to really reassess where they were in their careers, and were they happy in their current jobs? Where are they going? And I think so many of us, whether you're really fully along in your career, I think we all could admit to kind of having this feeling of time to time is, feeling a little stuck, or I had hopes that I would be promoted by this time, or, I really wanted to be at this level at this time. And maybe you've had some career momentum, but now you just feel like you're kind of petering out or not getting to where you want to go as fast as you can. And so if that feels like you, sometimes you need to think about, well, what am I doing to promote myself? What am I doing to make sure people have an understanding of my brand and what I bring to the table? And it's not really rocket science, but it does take some intentionality.
And you're right. The times that we've gone through over the last 3 years or so, just over 3 years now, have really changed the way everybody looks at the work-home life balance, the way you live your life, and the importance, of bringing your brand, whatever it is, to the forefront, because you don't have to be in communications. You can be somebody who is in IT, or you can be a teacher or a firefighter. But if you want to move ahead in the company, or move to another company, or move ahead, even if you're a PTO member and you kind of want to do a little bit more, take the next step, you can't sit and wait for people to find you.
No.
because there's always going to be somebody else who is talking about what they've done. Now, I'm of the mindset, and a lot of us are, where we don't go around tooting our own horn. We don't want to do that. We think that it looks inappropriate to tell people how good you are.
You're absolutely right. And there's a lot of research to back that up. Certain segments of the population find anything that resembles self-promotion really distasteful. So women are among them, and a lot of people, it's not just women, but if you think about it, if you say to somebody self-promotion, like you almost have an instantaneous reaction. Nobody likes a self-promoter. So, and that's fine. And I think
why?
Well, I think not all self-promotion is created equal. Okay, so that's, I think, first. So I think we all can identify with, we've all seen that person in our careers where they overdo it in terms of self-promotion. They hog the spotlight, they just overdo it. And we look at that and we think, I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe that person's mom didn't give them enough attention when they were growing up. But I don't want to do anything that comes off looking like that. I call it, when I give my talks, I give it the ick factor.
Yes.
It just, self-promotion can feel icky.
Yeah.
But I think we have to be cautious to say, if we're not self-promoting or kind of thinking about our reinvention of ourselves, are we limiting ourselves in some fashion? And is there a way to self-promote, or take control of your career narrative. Make sure people know your value. They understand what you bring to the table. So rather than you call it self-advocacy, if you like that term better.
I do like that term.
Well, we're advocating for ourselves.
Yes. Okay.
And I think if you're a woman, if you're in a lot of different segments, you really have to be careful not to fall into the I'm just going to let my work speak for itself trap. It's a noble thought, but I'm not sure it gets you where you want to go.
It is, but the problem is, what if your work doesn't speak loud enough?
That's right.
And what if what you're doing is wonderful? And if you're doing all these, it's not just local, and it's not just career oriented. It can be, everybody knows somebody, or you've seen people in the news, or how about, movie stars? Do we still use those terms? Or comedians, or other performers, or rock stars, that are just so full of themselves that you take a step back and you say, oh, well, I don't really care for their manner, but you still listen to their music, you still go to their movies, you still go to all of that, and then there's the other people who don't really care about promoting themselves, and it goes back to what you said about let's let our work speak for ourselves. Well, back in the day, you could write the best song in the world and record the best song, but if you didn't get the radio stations to play it, then nobody got to hear it, and that's kind of what we're talking about here.
That's right. And I think the reason why you want to do it, and when I started off with the COVID reassessment, if you're letting your work speak for yourself and everything's going fine for you, you're right where you want to be, you feel like you're in your groove with your job, then great, go forth and conquer. But if you're somebody who is kind of reassessing and kind of feeling a little passed over, and I think we've all felt a little bit passed over in our career, but maybe that's a symbol that we need to be telling our career story a little bit better. And my thinking is, being a public relations communications person, is you can't take control and be intentional, tell the story that you want to tell about your career without doing a bit of self-promotion. And so that's what I think people have to get comfortable with. And then, again, not all self-promotion is created equal. Can you do it in a way that is authentic to you, that makes you feel like a good human, that you can look yourself in the mirror every day and feel good about it? And I think that there are good ways to do it so that it aligns with who you are. And think of it this way. At any given moment, you may be right now considered by your boss for a promotion. Maybe there's a new job opening up. Maybe there's a new project, high-profile project that your boss is thinking to assigning to somebody. As those career opportunities open up, you don't want any confusion about what you bring to the table, who you are, what you want to be known for. And that's a good way to think about it. So if you're happy and things are going well for you, great. But if you're in a little bit of a funk and you feel like, I need some reinvention, maybe this is a way to think about it. And I think you can think about self-promotion in a way that doesn't feel icky. I know that's not terribly scientific, but no ickiness.
Let's look back at some of the people from history, from past times where we weren't around, before radio and TV and cable and all these sort of things where we could tell our own tale. There were people out there that we read about in history books that maybe their story, because somebody else told their story, is not completely accurate.
Yes. So Sue Ellen's been to a few of my talks, and one of the stories that I lead off with, because I am a lover of history, and some of this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I always start off talking about Marie Antoinette, last Queen of France for the French Revolution. She's widely known for having said,
"Let them eat cake."
Let them eat cake. Well, now flash forward 200 plus years later, most modern day historians now say that the woman never said, "Let them eat cake." And yet, for anybody who knows Marie Antoinette, that's what we associate her with. She is known, she's forever gone down in history as cold-hearted monarch, person who said that line. And so tongue-in-cheek, I always say, she wound up losing her head for it, right? So not only was her career narrative confused, lots of confusion over her.
But she literally lost her head.
She lost her head over it. And she's probably more known for losing her head at the guillotine than her husband, King Louis XVI, which I find. So anyway, as a PR person, kind of tongue-in-cheek, I always said, what would have happened if Marie Antoinette had a PR person, a communicator like us, helping her? Maybe she might be more fondly remembered. Maybe she would have never lost her head at the guillotine. So the good news is that even if we don't pay attention to our own self-promotion, or we don't think about our own career narrative, no one's going to march us off to the guillotine. That's
well,
true.
that is good news. That is good news.
But I still think there's consequences, and that gets back to maybe feeling like you need to reinvent, or feeling a little bit passed over, which, I always say that's not guillotine bad, but that still can feel pretty bad.
I like what you say about controlling your own narrative, because everybody has a different perception and a different narrative. And if you let other people tell your story, it may not be the true and authentic one that you want to represent you.
Yes.
You may have in your head. And one thing that comes to mind, and I remember being, for a few years, I taught English, thinking that would be a natural thing for a journalist to do. I loved my high school students and tried to give them a variety of different things to really make them think. And one of the things we did in one class was write our own obituary.
Oh, boy.
And there is nothing, I don't think, that makes you take a good hard look at what kind of story you're telling about yourself than to write your obituary or how you want to be remembered. But it also makes you think, when you're looking back on your life, when you're older, at how are people, have I told my story enough ways? Are they hearing what I've said, what I'm saying? Are the things that I'm doing the things that people are noticing? That's or are they noticing the things I don't want them to?
Right. That assessment, whether it's through an obit or, whatnot, is I think a really good assessment. I think that throughout our careers, we're very often led to believe that you have to be exceptional. And you do have to be exceptional, but I don't think you have to be exceptional at everything.
Okay.
And so part of the problem is, as you said, is somebody else telling our story for us. Mm-hmm. But I think the other problem is that sometimes we get into, and if you're just starting out, of course, you have to think about a lot of things. But as you get more developed, I think it's smart to look at, rather than to promote all these facets of myself, which, can lead to a very fuzzy brand. What if you start to look at, okay, in my job at work, what do I want to be known for? What's the one thing that makes me better or different from anybody else doing a similar job? And identifying what I call your one thing. Are you a kick butt leader? You're the leader that everybody will go through a wall for. You get everything done through other people. You're an exceptional leader. Maybe that's your one thing, and that's the one thing you really want to promote about yourself.
Well, how do you figure out what your one thing is?
Yeah, so like, you could be a leader, so lots of things could be your one thing. You're creative, maybe it's something in the creative space, maybe you're, make the engine run on time type of thing, whatever your one thing is. People always ask, after I give my talks, and part of the talk is identifying your one thing, but the other big part of it is, once you know your one thing, helping other people to see it. And that's really where the focus is. But when I give my talks, people rush up to me and they have panic in their eyes. Oh my gosh, I don't know my one thing. Help me figure out what my one thing is. So that's a really good question. Don't overthink your one thing. You do that analysis like you were suggesting. Write your own obit. That makes sense. Think about what is it that of all the tasks that you have that make up your job, what's the one or two things that you really enjoy doing, that you are in your groove when you're doing this? When you're doing this aspect of your job, you don't even watch the clock. Time flies by because you really enjoy it. You're good at this one thing of your job. Your boss and your employer values the one thing, and you're really good at it, right? You don't have to be an expert right now, but you have to be kind of good at it. And in that makes up your one thing. You find it by doing your own self-analysis. I think it's really important to talk to your manager or your boss. And you may not go in there and say, hey, boss, what's my one thing? Because they'll probably look at you like, what are you talking about?
You're 5 minutes late for everything.
Right, yeah. But if you were to send a pre-email and just say, hey, during our next one-on-one, I'm really into self-improvement. I want to continue to get better, and I want to enhance my skills. So next time we meet, let's talk a little bit about, what are you relying me for? What do you know, come heck or high water, I'm going to deliver, okay? So now you have your own assessment, you have your boss's assessment, and then I highly recommend talking to a colleague that you trust, not somebody who's competing with you, but somebody who you trust, and say, you watch me in meetings, you watch me lead projects. What do you think, like the one or two things that I deliver over and over again? And then you put all those points of information together and you do a little bit of thinking and you'll come up with your one thing. Don't overthink it. I think of your one thing. What is it that makes you better or different from everybody else doing a similar job, similar to your personal brand? But for me, when people talk to me about my personal brand, I found that it's too broad, it's overwhelming, because there's a lot of things that go into your personal brand. By identifying just your one thing, it's kind of like you're looking at your personal brand as a ladder. And then there's several rungs in the ladder that feed up to your overall brand. Your one thing is just one rung on the ladder. Focus on that. Become known for that, become good at that, and then you can always move to another rung in the ladder. I'm just trying to make it more digestible and actionable.
So what if the one thing that your boss and your co-worker or your spouse identifies is not something you want to be known for? Can you change your one thing?
I think you can, but I think that what you'll find is if you're really delivering for them, it's probably something that you have some type of an affinity for. I mean, not always. And I'm not talking about your life purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, that's different. It's work. Yeah. That's why they call it work, because sadly, it is work.
Yeah.
But I think you can probably find something. But you're fine to say, I'm really good at this. I enjoy doing this. There's other people who do it, but I really do it well. And, I'll give you an example in our world of communicators. So my one thing when I was in corporate America was I wanted to be a trusted advisor to executives. I wanted to be that person when the proverbial you-know-what hits the fan, we're in crisis mode, executives come to me for advice. They come to me because they know I'm going to tell them what they need to hear, not necessarily what they want to hear. And that was my one thing. And there are other people in corporate comms who do that, but I felt like I really did it well. So that's what I wanted to be known for, and that's what I really worked to develop and to make sure that other people saw that quality.
If you're talking especially to your boss or your higher up or your coworker about it, can you kind of lead them a little bit to where you want them
Sure.
to notice?
Yeah, I mean, I think what your boss says is just one point of information for you. You know, you say gather up some data, but I think it's fine to say, what's my passion at work? But you do have to make sure that your boss and your company values it, right? That's
Okay,
the other thing.
right.
And the other thing about your one thing, oftentimes I find it's a soft skill. It's a soft skill as opposed to a hard skill. So your non-negotiable skills for your job, your education, your certification, your expertise, those are hard skills. But oftentimes your one thing is more of a soft skill. You're a really good leader. You bring people together. You're the deal maker. You're the partnership builder.
You're the listener.
Yeah, you're the really good listener with
Yeah.
an outcomes. And, you know, corporate America today, there's so much change going on. So maybe it's something in the space that you lead through change. And, you know, you're still standing to talk about it when it's over. It almost, to me, it's like you're good at it. You know you're good at it. You deliver it over and over again, that one skill. Your company values it. Then you know your one thing. And then you can move into, okay, this is my one thing. Now, how do I help other people to see my one thing? Because if you kind of loop it back to the overall goal, you're being considered for a new job. Maybe you're being considered for a promotion. Maybe there's this high profile project that you want to be named to lead. As those opportunities open up, we don't want there to be a fuzzy perception of what you're all about. We almost are working towards this association. It's a and rather than shameless self-promotion, what we're working to is toward a game of association. And what I mean by that is every time they think of LWoisard, they think of a really good executive, you know, counselor. Or every time they think of I need a really good executive counselor, they think of LWoisard. That's what we're going for here, is that people, when you walk into the boardroom, they automatically think of your one thing. That's what we're trying to achieve. And we can do it in a way that's not shameless self-promotion.
The Treasure Coast is filled with a lot of small businesses too. So what if you don't have a communications person, but you are the owner of your own small business? How can you apply? Is there an application of finding that one thing that you as a small business owner are using to apply that to the larger community?
Sure. I mean, I think how I got the idea is through thinking of it through the business owner lens almost, because if you're working with a company, one of the first things you need to know to promote them is what's their differentiator, what's their competitive differentiator. So I think it can translate to our careers, what's our personal differentiator or one thing. But I think if you're a small business owner, what's the one thing that you do better than your competitors, that you're known for? And sure, you know, you've got to do a lot of things well. A small business owner wears a lot of different hats, but all the more reason to have a good handle on is it service? Is it, you know, is it pricing? Is it that you're part of the fabric of the community? Honing in on that and then coming up with a plan to tell and sell it to the rest of the world, to your customers, your community. So it's focusing whatever your one thing is, or if it's a business, what's your differentiator, and then with frequency and repetition, you promote that one thing so that you become known for it.
Well, one of the examples that I was thinking about was, for example, a roofing company. I mean, so for the most part, all roofing companies are kind of in the same approximate estimation of their cost, and they all do the same thing. They all put a roof on your house. And we recently had experience like a year ago with a new roofing company that a young man had started. And what different, so when people said to me later, they said, why did you use him? Because did you take the lowest bid? No, we didn't take the lowest bid. Did you take the highest bid? No, obviously not. But we had so many bids in the middle. But the reason that I would recommend the company was the soft things that I saw. The fact that every day after they worked, they cleaned up after themselves. The way the business owner talked to his employees, the way that they were timely, you know, all of those soft things that had nothing to do with the roof they put on our house or the costs that they charged. but the rest of the picture.
That's right.
And, so to me, if he was going to differentiate and sell himself, I would kind of think, like, if I was doing PR for him, I would say, we take care of you. We
Right.
don't just put a roof on your house.
That's right.
We make sure there's not debris left in the yard. We clean up after ourselves. We take care of our workers so they show up when they say they're going to.
That's right. Yeah, totally agree with that. And, for a small business owner, they may have a good handle on what it is that they do really well and what their customers want. And a lot of companies also do research to figure out what really resonates with people. But, I think you're right. And I think that's an awesome example. Since moving to the Treasure Coast, we had somebody come look at our roof. I think we had a leak or something. And the roofing company came. He fixed the little leak. It was minor. And then my husband said, well, how much? And he said, nothing, but you need a new roof. Call me when you're ready to do a new roof. And I will tell you, we will call that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my husband's like, can you believe he didn't even charge me for that? But I think that company is thinking long term.
Yeah, yeah.
And don't you know? We've told neighbors, told, you know what I mean? So that's,
and you're telling people right now.
That's right. I wish
about
I
the
could remember
story.
the actual name of the company, but that's to your point. I think that's a really good example.
Yeah, no, and so it's the soft skills that make the difference, and the human service part of the business. But on the other hand, if people aren't noticing those things about your business or about you or about your actions, then you got to figure out a way to tell them.
That's right, and just be intentional.
Even if it feels icky.
Mm-hmm. Right. And if you, I think businesses are used to taking out paid advertising. Even if you're a small business, real estate, you have to take out a fair amount of advertising. So I think that's great. But if you're thinking about your personal brand as a business owner, as somebody in a company, how do I tell my story without it feeling icky, and knowing that women in particular, this is a hard one for, because research shows pretty much hand down that very often you can have a very high achieving woman, you'll ask her to talk about her accomplishments, and very often she'll undersell it. And I think the research got at, women tend to be very relationship oriented, and the belief is if you're self-promoting, then you're alienating people. Women don't want to do that, so do they just steer clear of it? But to me, if you're steering clear of it, then you're putting yourself at a little bit of a disadvantage. So in the talks that I've been giving, talk a little bit about, your one thing, the thing that your competitive differentiator, or your one thing that makes your brand you, and one of the rungs in the ladder. How do you share it? It's a gift, right? If you've identified your one skill, say you're a leader, you're a really good leader, you're empathetic, you get work done through other people. It's a gift. So then if you start thinking about it, rather than shameless self-promoting, me, you start thinking about, how do I share my gift with other people? So if you think about sharing, even how much time we spend on social media, well, is there a way, rather than just arbitrarily liking and sharing and commenting, now you start to think about, okay, well, maybe there's special chat groups and conversations going on about strategic leadership, and you kind of forward and share things that have something to do with leadership. So what ends up happening is you build your visibility on social, right? You raise your presence on social, but you're also raising it around your one thing. And you're just sharing information. We talk in the talk about teaching your one thing, and people always get
I was
out by
thinking
that.
about that. No, because if you've identified your one thing, but you see it in other people, or you see that they need to do that, how do you communicate to them that this is important to do?
That's right. Yeah. And it's a great way to share your gift, your one thing. It's a great way to to help others. It doesn't feel icky because you're teaching your one thing. And that can mean a lot of things that, some people get freaked out by it, but you could do public speaking like I do and share information, but you could do something that's a whole lot less intimidating, which is, do you host a lunch and learn at your small business or for your colleagues where you report out maybe on something you've been working on, but you weave into it things about your one thing. Because then what you're doing is you're raising your visibility around your one thing. You can, on LinkedIn, one of the most, I think, underutilized tools on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn says it's very effective, is, right under your, go make a post, there's this publish an article button. And within a couple of minutes, you could write, a 3-paragraph article that has something to do with whatever you want to say about your small business, your roofing company, but you weave into it your one thing. So we're always there for you if that's the roofing company, or if it's more your personal brand, you talk about something that's relative to your one thing. And you just hit publish, and suddenly you're a published author. You're a thought leader all of a sudden. But again, you see what you're doing? You're sharing your gift of your one thing or your differentiator. You're giving information. You're not necessarily looking for anything. You're raising your visibility, and you're raising your visibility over, about your one thing. Again, because when people see you walk in, we want them to remember what you want to be known for. And you have to be purposeful about helping people to see it.
I think that, and I know other people who feel similarly, that social media has upped the ick factor on self-promotion.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the ick factor, of course, the ick factor being that you feel like it makes you look
self-absorbed,
desperate,
thirsty. I think
thirsty. I like that.
The popular terminology.
But there are a lot of people who do post things. It's like you can't have dinner with your family without posting a picture of where, or you can't go on a trip without posting a picture to Instagram or commenting or on the wonderful things. And of course, the vision of that as it forms of you is that you have this perfect life that you are constantly bragging about.
Right.
Which ups the ick factor.
Right. Well, I think if you're on LinkedIn, something like that is probably bad form. But even on LinkedIn, there's a lot of that stuff. And somebody who wrote a book on social media, I didn't read the book in all honesty. Somebody told me this, but I got to go look it up. But he said to think about when you're posting, it's almost like a boxing match. So you do, I'm going to get this wrong because I'm not a really big boxer, but 2 jabs and then a hook,
Okay.
2 jabs and then a hook. So the 2
Okay.
jabs are, you're just sharing helpful information maybe about your one thing or your competitive differentiator. You're not necessarily me, I did this. You're just sharing information, but you are linking yourself to that one thing quality.
Right.
And then 2 of those, and then the hook would be, hey, look at me, I got this award or I've been nominated. So it's jab, and then hook. So give information. You're not looking for anything in return. And then, the third post out there, maybe it's something that's a little more focused on you. According to that expert, that's the best way to think about it. But I think you're so right.
Yeah.
And, once I had a direct report, and I thought I was pretty close to her. And I would just watch her Instagram feed. And you would think this woman, she has the best life. She goes everywhere. She's at all these music festivals. She's with her family. Life is good if you look at this woman's Instagram post. So finally, I have coffee with her. And she says, we're having coffee. We're just catch-up meeting. And she says to me, I don't know if you know this, but the last couple of weeks have been really tough for me. I had sciatica. I had to get a surgery or something. It didn't work. It's made me feel depressed. I've been really challenged. And I'm like, holy crap. No, I didn't know that because I was believing
what you
were saying on your, and I thought that was, she's just like, I don't know if I've been going through a really hard time. And I'm like, no, I'm glad we're having this coffee to get caught up because on the daily Instagram feed, that's not the impression I got. But that's to your point.
But, and I'm not saying as far as social media that people should post real things and be constantly asking for prayers because they woke up that morning, with a sciatica problem or what. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying the way to cross the line. And part of it is probably what type of social media you use.
Yeah.
Like, for example, things like if you publish a paper, like you said on LinkedIn, that seems to be a more subtle way of doing it, as opposed to in your face, look at me, look at me.
Yeah.
And I think that that's probably the difference. And so you can harness that power of using social media. As a matter of fact, you should.
That's right. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
you should do it in a way
thoughtful.
that's not. Yeah.
That's right. Very thoughtful and strategic. Hey, can we talk about one fun thing that always gets a lot of go in and see if you remember this?
Yes.
But so when we talk about, your differentiator or your one thing, and this gets back to your personal brand, but one of the things when I give a talk, this always gets so much discussion going. One of the things I say that your one thing, and now you're telling it and selling it to the rest of the world so that other people see your one thing. So as those jobs open up, people know what you're all about. And one of the things, in addition to the social media, in addition to teaching your one thing, is look the part. And this part of the talk always gets a lot of conversation because what we say is every decision you make at work is an opportunity to play up your one thing, or it winds up diluting your one thing. Every decision can play up your one thing or dilute it. So one of the things is what do you wear to work, and what does that say about your one thing? So I do a little short ditty on what to wear to work, and I talk about my one thing. I want to be a serious consultant. Executives take me seriously. So most days at work I dress up a little more than down. And I also talk about, I would never wear jeans on a Friday because everybody dresses really down on a Friday. And I wanted to look a little more elevated. People take me more serious. So if I dress slightly more up on a Friday, knowing that everybody else is dressed slightly more down, I stand out more. So that worked for my one thing. But the other kind of funny thing that I talk about is, this research that said just about anything you say will be viewed smarter if you say it in a collared shirt.
Oh, now that is interesting. The whole collared shirt thing.
Yes.
And I know when you talked about that at our Florida Public Relations Association meeting, everyone was looking at everybody else in the room to see who was wearing collared shirts.
Yeah. So it's just kind of, I forget when I was writing the talk, I kind of ran across it and it was so funny. And little did I know of the whole talk. Sometimes I do that talk and it's interactive workshop. That's what gets the most buzz, which is kind of funny. But anyway, the research said that, there's certain clothes that do make you look smarter. But the relevant point relative to a collared shirt was something to do with our association of academic uniforms. So when you had to, some of us, you had to wear a school uniform. And so and a lot of times they were formal with collars. So we automatically kind of associate academics smart.
Okay.
And so I always make the joke that, if I had to go in and convince executives to do something maybe they were reluctant to do or get them to spend some money they didn't want to spend, I was definitely going to wear a collared shirt. But anyway, that's just kind of a funny point that always gets a lot of discussion, but it's all part of know your one thing, and then every decision
and act like it.
Right, is an opportunity. So if you're creative type, you may not want to look very, very conservative from head to toe. You might want to have fun jewelry on or something that makes you very approachable and makes your creative side shine.
And it's funny that you mentioned that because I have always seen myself as the creative type. And when we were talking about one thing, I think the one thing is that I'm not afraid to try new things.
Right.
And that's the thing that my employees or my bosses have always known about me, that I'm not afraid to try new things.
And your look reinforces that.
And it does. And so my rule of thumb when I was more in corporate or company type was that I would wear either a conservative look in a bright color, or I would wear a conservative color in something that was a little bit more. So one thing or another was always conservative.
You're instinctively doing what image consultants tell you to do. So I'm taking classes at the London Image Institute. It's like if you want to be an executive coach or something. And one of the things that they said, which I found so interesting, is that no matter what your one thing is, a safe bet, particularly if you're a leader or you're aspiring to a leadership position, they said you always want to balance, and I think this reinforces what you just said, you always want to balance a look that says authority, you have some credibility, gravitas, with approachability. And so think about how that translates. You may have on a more structured jacket, but you've got some fun jewelry on. Or if you're a man, maybe you've got some fun socks.
Yes.
But it's almost like something that says you know your stuff, you have authority, but also you're approachable. They said to balance a look that says authority, credibility, with approachability. And that's almost exactly what you described, and that's what they say you should do.
And you can, especially for young people who are rising up in the workforce, who would like to believe that they're not going to be judged on what they say and how they dress and what they do. And it is an innocent, and you just want to shake your head and say, oh, please, you're going to learn it. And a lot of times when you're their parent or your boss, what you say may not have any effect on them, but sooner or later they're going to learn it themselves.
That's right.
Like wearing flip-flops to an interview. I know, I see your face, but you see that. I know people who work for our local career source,
I
and
also
they
think,
talk about that.
I kind of feel bad because I have a daughter who's, young professional age. And I think sometimes there are kind of mixed signals. You can wear jeans. I worked in a technology company. It was very relaxed. And when I used to tell people who reported into me, who were aspiring leaders, this was my what I would always tell them. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So the company may be fine with you wearing jeans, and they're not going to get on you if you have ripped jeans. That's fine. And maybe we don't really care if you're, in a technology cube and you have flip-flops on. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. Think about what you want to communicate, your one thing, what you want people to know about you, and does your look reinforce that?
And you're talking about beyond the look, as well as your actions,
Yes.
and what you say. And here's something else that I see a lot is, especially I would think more with men, is using curse words as part of your normal conversation. And the inappropriateness, to me, you might not offend 8 out of 10 people in the room because it's just like a gentle, but that 1 or 2 people that you do offend is going to remember that about you.
Yep, that's a little risky. It's a risk you probably don't need to take by talking that way at work, but
Yeah.
One other thing that I want to make sure that we get to is relationships and how important relationship and networking is. And so if you, again, we're building something, you're one thing, and now you're helping other people to see it through what you share on LinkedIn and other forums, by what you teach, by how you look. The other part is networking. So if you're feeling stuck, you're looking to move up, career sponsors, there's been so much research on career sponsors, people who advocate for you when you're not even in the room. They, if you talk to highly successful people, they'll often say that they had people who they considered career sponsors. And you can't get a career sponsor unless you have some basic relationship with them. Getting a basic relationship with influencers, maybe you work at a company and your CEO is somebody that you'd like to be on their radar screen. Well, sometimes it's a little weird to
ask for it.
Yeah, to ask for coffee or just
Yeah.
walk, hey, will you be my sponsor?
Yeah.
Right, that's always the weird
Yeah.
way, is everybody knows how important it is to have sponsors, but it's really hard to get them, or it feels awkward. So anyway, one of the things that we talk about in my presentation is, what if you started to look at relationship building through the prism of your one thing? And maybe at your company or in your community, who are the people, the influencers, the decision makers who share an interest in your one thing or are already experts in your one thing? And my thinking of that is that it makes it a whole lot less awkward to build a relationship with somebody where you can sit down and talk to them about, hey, Joe Executive, I've watched what you've done in terms of leading people, and you're really well known as a really remarkable leader. I don't know if you know this about me, but that leadership is one of my key things. Wink, wink, that's your one thing. And then you talk about what this person has learned about leadership. You have a conversation about that. So you start with your one thing, because then you have this intersection of commonality. And then after you have this coffee with this influencer, you've raised your visibility with this influencer who, and that person is more likely to be a sponsor of you. It's a way to create a baseline relationship based on commonality of your one thing. Relationship building, networking, it's really important, and we talk about it, doing it through the one thing lens.
What about if you want to gain further knowledge in that, and you're talking to your supervisor, and you have found, for example, if you want to be known as a leader, but you have found a leadership type of course that can up your skill level?
Yeah. That's a great way to do it. And that's the beauty of you taking time to really, as you said, write your own obituary and know what you want to be known for, is now once you know what you want to be known for, now you can make these other things happen that continue to build your one thing, asking for additional training or to be sent to that course. Now you're building something. Mm-hmm. You say you're building, this is what I want to be known for. I'm actually building that expertise, and I will be known for it. And, I was thrilled to take this class, and I finished this class, and suddenly you have something to talk about on social.
And
your
this
boss
is what
knows
I got.
it.
Yeah,
and you're really building up your expertise.
Yeah.
So that's the whole premise.
Well, we have about maybe 6-7 more minutes to go. So let's kind of wrap this up. We got a long time for wrapping. So we're not going to end it. But the last few minutes of the radio show always seems to go so quickly. And I want people who are listening today to be able to walk away with some specific things that they can do differently to make themselves be more marketable, stronger, and feel comfortable in their growth. What would you say?
Get over your discomfort with self-promotion. Taking control of your career narrative, telling the story that you want to tell, involves self-promotion. So think of it a little bit differently. Self-promotion doesn't have to feel icky. Think about it as, first, you owe it to yourself to think this way for yourself. You owe it to yourself to kind of identify, what do I enjoy doing? What am I good at? What's my one thing? Once you know your one thing, don't overthink it. You can always move on to another one thing in time. Once you know your one thing, be intentional about promoting your one thing so that other people see it. So as those jobs open up, people know what you stand for. And you can do it in a non-icky way. You can do it on social by joining chats and sharing and getting in communities that align with your one thing. You can teach your one thing, which is a very good human thing to do. It's not icky at all. You can build relationships through your one thing. Once you decide what your one thing is, look at every decision you make at work, what you wear, what you share, what you teach.
What you post on your desk.
That's right.
The posters you put on your wall, the quotes that you share.
That's right. Is it an opportunity to align yourself with your one thing? Over time, it's not lightning in a bottle. Over time, you become known for your one thing. Other people will see you. And you can always say, okay, I'm known for this one thing. Now I'm going to look in the rung of my ladder, my branding ladder, and maybe work on another one thing in months' time. It's not lightning in a bottle, but it's a way to do it that doesn't make self-promotion feel icky. And I think you deserve to think this way for yourself. Mm-hmm. A lot of us don't think we deserve to think this way about ourselves. You do.
If people feel like they would like to learn more about this, can they follow you on LinkedIn? How do we reach you?
That would be great. Or if you have a group that you'd like me to come talk to, I'm always happy to do that. On LinkedIn, I talk about this stuff all the time. So it's L as in Leigh, just L, LWoisard. And my last name is WOISARD, LWoisard, or LWoisard on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And I've had a lot of good, just getting, in the local community, I've had a chance to speak to some different women's groups and other groups. So the response has been been good. Feels good to help people, and it's nice to have this next chapter of my career.
It is, and we appreciate you sharing too. I know one of the ways to get better at something you do is to imitate somebody that does it well.
That's true.
And so, or surround yourself with people, so you don't really just have to have one mentor or one person who, you could surround yourself with a variety of people. And I think it applies, and we didn't really even get a chance to talk about this, but I think this applies in your personal life too, very much so, because say you're dating, say you're applying it in your dating life and you were like, oh, well, nobody really likes me or thinks I'm funny. I mean, that's not a strong way to lead a first date.
No.
So if you have that unique selling proposition of yourself without being so
true.
obnoxious about it.
That's a good point, because even before identifying your one thing, you have to have the confidence. I really am good at this. I don't have to be an expert now, but I'm building up an expertise on this. I'm good at it, and I should be telling the rest of the world I'm good at it. And if you're a woman or maybe just somebody just starting out, be mindful of the voices and the thoughts that we have in our head. Don't believe everything you think.
Yeah.
They're just thoughts. They're not you.
So one last question for you. What do you think of the phrase "fake it till you make it"?
I think that if you're somebody who has maybe a little imposter syndrome or you struggled with confidence, I think that can be a good thing. As long, you got the goods to back it up. You are really good. You put in the time and the effort. I think that's a great thing, particularly somebody who does struggle with maybe imposter syndrome or, unproductive thoughts in your head. I think that I'll go with it.
So you decide what your one thing is, or what your main thing that you want to be identified as. You dress the part, you act the
Tell it
part,
and sell it.
you tell it and sell it. LWoisard has been my guest today, and she is a communications consultant. You can find her on LinkedIn, and you can listen to this show every week for more. Thanks for joining me today, and thank you, Leigh, for joining us as well.
Having me. Appreciate it.
The Sue Ellen Sanders Show. Weekends on WPSL, usually in the mornings around 7:05 Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings, and an occasional 11 o'clock appearance during one of those weekend days as well. And archives are on YouTube. The Sue Ellen Sanders Show on WPSL.